All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, the New York Times really outdid itself yesterday with a new story on Bernie Sanders and his so-called very mean internet army. The story focused intently on so-called victims of abuse from his online supporters. Now look, obviously, I don't have a dog in this fight. But this story is the height of woke elite privilege that pervades institutions like the New York Times. It's eminently clear that a bunch of Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker-loving elite journalists are really just mad that people on the internet trolled them in their mentions. So why do so many Sanders supporters, Trump supporters, conservatives, anti-establishment figures have large followings on the internet? Well, it's because they don't let us have any real representation in elite institutions like, say, the New York Times. So to give you an idea of how ridiculous this story is, the first person that they quote as having been harassed by Bernie supporters is Bakari Sellers. He's a prominent CNN commentator who vigorously backed Kamala Harris, and he vilifies anyone who does not agree with him. At one point, I remember him asking people to donate to Tulsi Gabbard's opponent before she decided to drop out of her congressional race. His complaint? Well, he has to consider before he tweets something about Sanders. And his evidence of harassment is somebody saying something racially insensitive to him via an Instagram DM. Now look, that guy is a lot more famous than me, and I've gotten my own share of racial abuse online. You know what? I just don't really care, because I balance that out with the privilege of having a show like this one every single day. I don't like it, but I don't blame, let's say, Elizabeth Warren supporters or her for the one who sent me a personal letter telling me that I was sexist for critiquing Elizabeth Warren and that it didn't surprise her given my Indian patriarchal heritage.
Oh my God.
The next person that they quote is, well, our old friend, Maya Contreras. You might remember her. She's the woman who accused Crystal of being a closeted Nazi because she used the phrase stabbed in the back to describe Elizabeth Warren's attack of sexism against Bernie Sanders. She wouldn't know anything about launching barbed attacks at people she disagrees with online, would she? I really wouldn't know, because she blocked me after I called her out for this. This entire story, it's a disgrace to journalism, just for framing the idea that candidates are responsible for the full behavior of their supporters online and their selective decision to blame Bernie. During 2016, they did the exact same thing to Trump. The Trump campaign became responsible for every stupid meme that an alt-right person happened to tweet at somebody who was never Trump. Hillary even did an entire stupid speech about Pepe the Frog memes, which to this day still cracks me up, because I think Wisconsin might have been a better use of her time. To flip the idea of the so-called aggressive Bernie bro on its head, let me posit this. Maybe the reason elite journalists get so much pushback from Trump and Sanders supporters online is that for the first time, they have a voice to push back. Instead of just getting love from their friends about how great their nauseating story is, journalists are finally hearing from the people that are supposed to swallow their narratives hook, line, and sinker. The reason that the meme of online bros supporting anti-establishment people exists is because the entire press were bootlickers for Hillary throughout the entire 2016 election. Because Twitter existed and it was more popular that election, a lot of people let them know how they really felt about the reporting. And here's the best part. Instead of meaningfully engaging with criticism from the consumers of their content, these journalists turn the negative feedback itself into stories about how their own self-importance and how obviously bad the candidates that they do not like are. Tell me this, who is worse, supporters of somebody calling out a journalist for unfair coverage, or journalists using their elite perches to punch back and smear regular people? That's what I think this is all really about. It's about a bunch of privileged people who think that they are God's gift to society, the fourth estate, untouchable, and that if you say anything negative about them, not only are you a terrible person, but the person that you happen to support is a terrible person.
Right.
It is laughable on its face.
And the scrutiny is ever only applied to anti-establishment candidates.
Exactly.
No other candidate has been asked this cycle to apologize for their supporters, which Bernie Sanders has repeatedly said, I don't support bullying, I want civility, I don't back that, like again and again, and yet he's the only one who is held to this standard. Of course, I get tons of hate online, you get everybody who's online gets tons of hate online.
Get over it, man.
That is Twitter,
Seriously.
right?
Sorry.
That is the reality.
Yeah.
And so there's so many layers to this. I mean, there's also the layer of the fact that undergirding this whole narrative, it used to be explicit. Now that Bernie Sanders has the most diverse coalition of any candidate, they can't make it explicit anymore. But the implicit narrative is about, like, like toxic young white men,
yes.
which completely invisibilizes the young voters of color, supporters of color that are disproportionately backing Bernie Sanders and women. So there's that. There's also the fact that there's a reason this is coming out now, which is they are freaking out that he's surging in the polls. They've got to throw something at him. They have nothing else prepared. And so they're just like, let's just run the Bernie Bros narrative again. Let's just try that again.
Like
Let's see if it works this time.
During 2016, they would profile all these people who were never Trump and be like, oh, so-and-so got trolled online. It's so terrible. Like, do you denounce this? Do you?
Right.
And people are like, yeah, like, I denounce this. This is terrible. But like, again, you can't connect the worst part of somebody to their overall campaign. It's ludicrous. And like you said, it erases. Again, what is the media trying to do? What are they really trying to do in a Bernie Bros narrative or in an alt-right narrative? Is it every single person who supports Trump is a disgusting white racist?
Right.
That's what they want to say.
Right.
That's the implicit message. For Tulsi Gabbard, you're a Russian bot. How about the millions of people out there who go, you know what? I want to get out of war too. It's like,
completely.
It is disgusting to smear those people. And like I said, these people think they're so important that they are above criticism, and they're not. We get to say whatever we want to them. Now, look, racist, sexist attack, terrible, disgusting. If you do that, you're a bad person. And it's totally unacceptable. But nobody is above criticism, especially the press.
Talk to Glenn Greenwald about a real cost for journalism. Right. Like, why don't you ask him what that actually looks like? I mean, I noted this too with the whole stupid Rogan endorsement controversy. The incredibly ugly things that were said about his listeners, which are millions upon millions of people. And again, this same narrative just asserted without any factual basis that it's all toxic young white men like living in their basements who are listening to a show. I listen to a show, you listen to a show. I mean, this is like, it's a great show. So maybe you should actually like listen to it, engage with the audience, and not just smear them all. But it's all based on this assumption. It's a way of smearing not only that candidate, but anyone who would support that candidate and otherizing them and making them problematic.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next up on Rising, the nation's national affairs correspondent John Nichols is going to be with us for a report from the ground in Iowa. That is next.